Do you understand what you've just done? The question hung in the silent cafe, spoken not in anger, but in something far more dangerous. Quiet, stunned disbelief. The kind that comes right before everything changes forever. 23 people stood frozen. Not moving, not breathing, just staring at the impossible scene. Renzo Bianchi, the man who owned half the city, reeling backward with shock written across his handsome face. And there, her arms still extended from the punch, dark ponytail whipping with the force of her movement, her expression fierce and unapologetic, stood a waitress in a black apron. Let me tell you something about strength. Real strength isn't about how hard you can hit. Any fool with rage and a closed fist can throw a punch. Real strength is knowing when to hold back and when to unleash everything you've been locking away. This is about violence and justice, about the cost of dignity, about what happens when you push someone too far. Hey, how are you doing today? Get comfortable because this is the kind of story that gets under your skin and stays there. My name is Audrey Keller. I'm 26 years old. 4 months ago, I shattered a mafia boss's jaw in front of 23 witnesses in a cafe that smelled like burnt coffee and broken dreams. Tonight, that same man is standing outside my apartment door. And he's not here for revenge. He's here because I'm the only person in this city who's ever made him feel powerless. This is the story of how I went from being a ghost, a nobody serving coffee while pretending my hands didn't remember how to break bones, to the woman who made the most dangerous man in the city feel something other than cold calculation. This is about the night a waitress became a warrior. If you're still with me, what I'm about to tell you sounds impossible, but every single word is true. Let me start from the beginning. Audrey was 16 when she realized she was different from other people. Not special, not chosen, just different in ways that made her father go quiet and watchful. While her classmates stressed about prom dates and college applications, Audrey was discovering something in herself that couldn't be taught in any gym. She had reflexes that didn't make sense, the kind that let her catch falling objects before her brain registered they were falling. A pain tolerance that bordered on disturbing. She'd broken her hand in a sparring match once and finished the round before anyone noticed. Her father noticed first. Jack Keller had been a boxing coach for 30 years. He'd trained hundreds of fighters, seen every kind of talent. But when he watched his daughter move, the way she read opponents, the way her body seemed to understand physics on an instinctual level, he knew she was built different. "You've got something, kid," he told her one afternoon in the gym. "Something I've never seen before. But you need to understand, power like this? It's a responsibility. You use it right or you don't use it at all." She promised him she would. By 19, Audrey Keller was a name whispered in underground fighting circuits. They called her the Reaper. 23 fights. 23 wins. She wasn't just winning. She was dominating. Dismantling opponents with surgical precision. She fought smart, efficient, deadly when she needed to be. Sponsors started calling. Legitimate promoters wanted to sign her. There was talk of a contract, $500,000 to go professional. Audrey could see the future opening up before her. Then came the 24th fight. His name was Marcus Chen, 22 years old, father of 2 little girls, a construction worker fighting to pay off his wife's medical debt. The fight was supposed to be straightforward. 3 rounds. Winner takes $15,000. But Marcus was desperate. In the second round, when Audrey had him backed into the corner, he threw an illegal elbow strike. Wild, panicked, breaking every rule. Audrey's body reacted on pure instinct. Counter, pivot, full rotation. She delivered a perfectly executed hook to the temple. Perfect form, perfect power, perfect technique. Marcus dropped, and he didn't get up. The doctors said it was a brain hemorrhage. Said the illegal elbow had already caused the damage, that Audrey's punch just finished what Marcus had started. The investigation cleared her of any wrongdoing. Self-defense. Legal response to an illegal strike. But Marcus Chin died 3 hours later in a hospital bed, surrounded by his family.
His wife.
His 2 daughters who would grow up without a father. And Audrey watched it happen on the security footage they showed during the inquiry. Watched herself throw the punch. Watched him fall. Watched the exact moment she became the thing she'd promised her father she'd never be. A killer. The professional contract was rescinded within a week. Not officially, they just stopped calling. The sponsors disappeared. Audrey's phone went silent. Then something worse happened. They offered her a new contract. $500,000. They saw the footage. They saw the tragedy.
And they saw dollar signs.
Controversy sells, they told her. Audrey walked away. For 18 months, Audrey punished herself. She moved into her car, a decade-old sedan with a broken heater. She drove away from everything familiar. The gym, her father's disappointed silence, the city where everyone knew her name. She avoided gyms like crime scenes. Avoided mirrors because she couldn't stand to see herself. Every time she caught her reflection, she saw a killer staring back. She took cash jobs where no one asked questions.
Dishwashing.
Warehouse work. Anything that kept her hands busy with something harmless. She told herself this was penance. If she could just be normal long enough, quiet enough, harmless enough, maybe the guilt would fade. But guilt doesn't fade. It just gets heavier. 3 months into her exile, Audrey found herself on a bridge at 3 in the morning. She didn't remember driving there. Just remembered standing at the railing, hands shaking, staring down at the black water below. It would be easy. 1 step, and the guilt would stop. Her hands tightened on the railing. 1 leg lifted. Then her phone buzzed. A wrong number. A spam call about an extended car warranty. The most meaningless, mundane interruption possible. But it broke the moment. Audrey stepped back from the railing. Her legs gave out, and she sat down hard on the concrete, shaking, crying, hating herself for not being able to go through with it, and hating herself more for wanting to. She didn't know if it was strength or cowardice that kept her on that bridge. Maybe it was spite. Maybe it was the stubborn part of her that refused to give up, even when giving up seemed like mercy. She drove away as the sun came up. Kept driving until she ran out of gas in a city she'd never heard of, outside a café with a faded sign that read Rosie's. Rosie McAllister found Audrey on a freezing January morning, sleeping in her car in the café parking lot, shaking so hard she could barely hold the steering wheel. Rosie was 64 years old and had owned the café for 40 years. She'd built something real in that place, a sanctuary for night shift workers, insomniacs, truckers, and people who didn't quite fit anywhere else. She recognized the look in Audrey's eyes immediately. She knocked on the car window. Audrey jerked awake, instincts flaring, body coiling to defend itself before she forced herself to freeze. To be harmless. Rosie didn't flinch. She just smiled and said 6 words that changed everything. "You look hungry, sweetheart. Come inside." Audrey followed her into the café like a stray dog. Rosie sat her down at the counter, poured her coffee, and brought her soup and toast without asking if she could pay. When Audrey finally found her voice, it came out broken. "I don't have money." "Didn't ask if you did," Rosie said simply. "You running from something or someone?" "Both," Audrey admitted. Rosie nodded like that made perfect sense. "You willing to work?" Audrey would have scrubbed toilets with her bare hands for a warm place to sleep. "Yes." "Can you waitress?" Audrey almost laughed. She could dismantle opponents in under 2 minutes, but waiting tables? That felt harder somehow. More exposed. I can learn.
So she did.
Rosie taught her everything. How to balance 4 plates at once. How to remember orders without writing them down. How to smile at customers even when they were rude. Most importantly, Rosie taught her how to be gentle. Audrey worked at Rosie's café for 18 months. 18 months of pretending she was normal. 18 months of serving coffee and pancakes while the best parts of herself slowly went numb. The regulars became her surrogate family. Old Mr. Huang came in every morning at 6, ordered black coffee, and worked on crossword puzzles. Sarah, the nurse on night shifts, always left generous tips. Tommy, the truck driver with tattoos covering his arms, told terrible jokes and always called her kid. They looked right through her, and that was exactly what she wanted. To be unremarkable. To be invisible. To be so harmless that no one would ever fear her again. She told herself this was better. That she'd left that life behind, and it couldn't touch her anymore. Then Renzo Bianchi walked through the door. It was a Wednesday night, 11:47 p.m. The cafe was almost empty. Just Mr. Huang finishing his decaf, Sarah grabbing coffee before her shift, and Tommy counting his tips at the counter. Audrey was wiping down tables when the door opened. 4 men walked in. Not customers. Predators. Audrey knew the difference immediately. It was in the way they moved, coordinated, alert, scanning the room like they were assessing threats. 3 of them wore suits that probably cost more than her car had. Professional. Dangerous. But it was the 4th man who made the air in the cafe change. Renzo Bianchi was mid-30s, Italian heritage written in the sharp angles of his face, and the dark hair slicked back from his forehead. Cold gray eyes that looked at the world like it was a balance sheet. Assets and liabilities. Nothing personal. His tailored white shirt was crisp despite the late hour, sleeves rolled to his forearms in a way that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. Everyone in the city knew the name Renzo Bianchi. 3rd-generation mafia, but he didn't run his empire like his grandfather had. No street violence, no messy hits. Renzo controlled the city's underworld like a CEO, construction contracts, city council votes, real estate development.
Clean.
Legal. Untouchable. The kind of man who could make people disappear with a phone call and never get his hands dirty. Audrey felt something shift in her chest. A recognition she hadn't felt in 18 months. Her fighter's instinct screamed to life. Danger.
Threat. Move.
She forced it down. Forced her hands to stay steady. She was Audrey the waitress. Harmless. Invisible. She walked over with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We close in 15 minutes. What can I get you? Renzo didn't look at her immediately. He was scanning the cafe, cataloging exits, windows, the other customers. His 3 men positioned themselves strategically, 1 near the door, 2 flanking their boss. When Renzo finally turned his attention to Audrey, his gray eyes moved over her like she was furniture. Assessing. Dismissing. Coffee, he said. His voice was smooth, educated, with just a trace of his grandfather's accent underneath. Black. We have drip coffee, Audrey said, keeping her voice level. Fresh pot. Fine. He walked past her to a booth in the corner, the one with the best view of the entrance and no blind spots. His men followed. Audrey's hands were shaking. Just slightly. Just enough that she had to clench them into fists to make it stop. Mr. Huang was already packing up his crossword puzzle, moving faster than usual. Sarah grabbed her coffee to go. Tommy caught Audrey's eye and mouthed, "You okay?" She nodded, forced another smile. Everything was fine. She'd pour the coffee. They'd drink it. They'd leave. Everything would go back to normal. She had no idea that normal had just walked out the door, and wasn't coming back. Audrey poured the coffee with careful precision. She set it on Renzo's table without making eye contact. "Thank you," he said, though it didn't sound like gratitude. She turned to walk away. "Wait." She stopped. Something in his tone made her instincts prickle. "What's your name?" Renzo asked. "Audrey." "Audrey." He said it slowly, like he was tasting the word. "You work here long?" 18 months. "And you like it?" "Serving coffee to truck drivers. Cleaning up after people." Audrey met his eyes. "It's honest work." Something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe. Or contempt. "Honest work," he repeated. He leaned back, spreading his arms across the top of the seat. Relaxed. In control. "You hear that? She likes honest work." One of his men, Dante, grinned. "That's rare these days, boss." Renzo took a sip of coffee, made a face, set it down with deliberate slowness. "This tastes like burnt dirt." "It's been sitting since dinner rush," Audrey said. "I can make a fresh pot." "Don't bother." He pushed the cup away. "How much do you make working here?" The question caught her off guard. "I don't think that's any of your business." Dante stepped forward. "Mr. Bianchi asked you a question." Audrey's body responded before her brain caught up. Subtle shifts. Weight transferring to the balls of her feet. Shoulders dropping half an inch. Combat ready, without looking like it. She caught herself. Force stillness. Force normal. "Minimum wage," she said quietly. Renzo laughed. Actually laughed. "Minimum wage. You hear that? She makes minimum wage serving coffee that tastes like burnt dirt in a café that smells like grease." His men joined in the laughter. "Performative. And you're proud of this?" Renzo continued. "This honest work? You think there's dignity in being poor?" "I think there's dignity in earning your own way," Audrey said. "Earning." He said it like a curse. "You want to know what earning means? I made more in the time it took me to drink that terrible coffee than you'll make in a year." "Then why are you here?" The question came out before she could stop it. "If this place is so beneath you, why come in at all?" The café went silent. Dante moved closer, but Renzo held up a hand. "No, it's a good question." He leaned forward. "I'm here because I own this building. I own the 3 buildings on either side of it. I own the entire block." Audrey's stomach dropped. "You're lying." He pulled out his phone, turned the screen toward her. Property records. Rosie's Café. Owner. Bianchi Holdings LLC. "So when I ask how much you make," Renzo continued, "I'm doing research. Trying to understand what kind of people work in places like this. Trying to decide if any of you are worth the trouble of relocating when I bulldoze this dump." Rage flooded through Audrey. White-hot and sudden. Not for herself.
For Rosie.
For the woman who'd saved her life, who'd built this place from nothing and poured 40 years into it. "This isn't a dump," Audrey said. Her voice was too quiet, too controlled. "This is Rosie's life. She's built something here. Something real." Renzo stood up. He was tall, at least 6 feet 2 inches. "You want to know what's real? Money is real. Power is real. Everything else is just people lying to themselves." He was standing right in front of her now, close enough that she could smell his cologne. "You're weak," he said softly. "All of you. You only exist because people like me allow you to exist." Audrey set the coffee pot down with careful precision. She met Renzo's gray eyes and kept her voice steady. "It's honest work," she said quietly. "Rosie gave me a chance when no one else would." Renzo leaned back, lifted the coffee cup, took a sip, and made a face like he'd tasted poison. He set it down with deliberate slowness. "Honest work," he repeated. "That's admirable. Really."
He paused.
Tell me, Audrey, how long has Rosie owned this place? The question landed wrong. Too specific. Too interested.
40 years, she said.
40 years.
That's a long time to build something.
A lot of memories. He nodded slowly. A lot of history. Dante pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. Renzo opened it, glanced at the contents, then turned it so Audrey could see. Property records. Official documents with a city seal. And there, in clean black ink, was Renzo Bianchi's signature next to the address of Rosie's café. I purchased this building 3 weeks ago, Renzo said casually. The previous owner was very motivated to sell. It was all very straightforward. Audrey's hands went numb. What? The property records are already filed. Everything's legal. He closed the folder with a soft snap. I plan to demolish this cafe in 30 days. There's a casino development scheduled to break ground in 45. Nothing personal. It's just business. The world tilted. Rosie had owned this building outright. She'd been so proud. 40 years of payments, finally owning something that couldn't be taken away. Except it had been taken away 3 weeks ago. And Rosie hadn't said a word. You can't, Audrey heard herself say. This place is a health code violation waiting to happen? Renzo interrupted smoothly. Outdated equipment, foundation issues. This building is barely standing. I'm doing the city a favor. White-hot rage flooded through Audrey's chest. Not for herself.
For Rosie.
For 40 years of waking up at 4 in the morning, for every burnt finger and aching foot, for every kind word given to broken strangers. Audrey's voice dropped to something cold. Something dangerous. This place is Rosie's entire life, she said, each word precise and sharp. You can't just erase it. Renzo's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his gray eyes.
Interest.
Maybe amusement. Watch me, he said. Renzo stood slowly, unfolding from the booth with deliberate movement. His 2 men shifted positions instantly, hands drifting toward their jackets. You're speaking out of turn, Renzo said, his voice still calm. I don't think you understand how this works. So let me make it simple. He took a step closer. You're going to apologize. You're going to tell me you understand your place. And then you're going to finish your shift and forget this conversation ever happened. Audrey's jaw clenched. Every muscle screamed at her to move, to fight, to show this man exactly what she was capable of. But she thought of Marcus Chen, thought of his daughters. I understand my place, she said, the words tasting like ash.
Good.
That wasn't so hard, was it? Audrey turned to walk away. To be invisible again. To swallow the rage and go back to being harmless. She made it 3 steps. The slap came from behind, hard and fast, the crack of it echoing through the cafe like a gunshot. Her head snapped sideways, pain exploding across her cheek. She stumbled, caught herself on a table. That's your place, Renzo said behind her. The cafe went absolutely silent. Mr. Huang froze at the door. A woman in the corner, another customer who'd been quietly drinking tea, stood with her mouth open in shock. Tommy half stood from his seat, his face gone pale. Everyone saw her humiliation, her powerlessness, the mark of Renzo's hand already blooming red across her face. And something inside Audrey shattered. The 18-month lock broke apart like glass. Her body moved before her brain caught up. Pure instinct. Pure training. Everything her father had taught her came roaring back. She spun on her heel, her dark ponytail whipping through the air.
Pivot. Step.
Transfer weight. Full rotation. Crack. Her fist connected with Renzo's jaw with perfect form, perfect power, every ounce of force channeled through her shoulder, her core, her legs. The shock registered on his handsome face for just a split second, those gray eyes going wide with disbelief, before physics took over. His head snapped back violently. His body followed, stumbling backward with his hands raised defensively, too late to stop what had already happened. Blood appeared at the corner of his mouth as he crashed against the booth behind him, then crumpled to the floor in a tangle of expensive clothes and shattered pride. Time fractured. Dante lunged forward, reaching for his gun. Audrey moved like water, grabbed his wrist mid-draw, twisted with mechanical precision. The weapon clattered to the floor. She swept his legs with her left foot.
He went down hard, gasping.
The second guard backed away, both hands raised in surrender, eyes wide with the recognition that comes from seeing a true predator. He wanted no part of whatever this woman was. The kitchen door slammed open. Rosie burst out, gray hair wild around her face, gripping her old wooden rolling pin in both hands like a battle axe, ready to fight the world if she had to. And on the floor, leaning against the booth with blood streaming down his chin, Renzo Bianchi's eyes found Audrey's face. His jaw hung at an unnatural angle, clearly broken. But his gaze was fully conscious, fully aware, and filled with something beyond simple rage. It was cold calculation, mixed with a grudging respect. And beneath that, something darker. A promise of violence, yes. But also interest. Pure, dangerous interest. Audrey stood over him, chest heaving, her black apron askew, her ponytail disheveled, her fist still clenched at her side. She'd never felt more alive, more herself. The fighter was awake, and the war had just begun. Dante struggled to his feet, cradling his wrist. "Boss, we need to get you to a hospital." Renzo held up one hand, silencing him. His eyes never left Audrey's face. When he finally spoke, his words were slurred, forced through a broken jaw, but somehow that made them more terrifying. "You're dead," he said simply. Not a threat. A statement of fact. Then Dante was helping him up, the second guard rushing over, both supporting their boss as they moved toward the door. Blood stained Renzo's white shirt. His jaw hung wrong. But before he was pulled through the doorway, he looked back at Audrey one last time. That look said everything. "This isn't over. You have no idea what you've just started. And I'm going to enjoy destroying you." The door swung shut. The bell chimed cheerfully. Rosie dropped the rolling pin and rushed to Audrey, her hands reaching up to examine the red mark blooming across Audrey's cheek, the perfect outline of Renzo's hand against her skin. "Baby, are you?" "I'm sorry," Audrey said, the words tumbling out. "Rosie, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have." "Stop." Rosie's voice was fierce, her eyes blazing. "You stood up for yourself. That's nothing to be sorry for. That man put his hands on you, and you defended yourself. I'm proud of you." "You don't understand." Audrey's voice cracked. That was Renzo Bianchi. The color drained from Rosie's face. All of it. What? Renzo Bianchi. The man who owns half this city. The man who just bought this building. Audrey's laugh came out broken, borderline hysterical. "I just broke his jaw in front of witnesses." Rosie stumbled backward, catching herself on the counter. Tommy swore softly. The woman who'd been drinking tea grabbed her purse and practically ran for the exit. "We need to call the police," Rosie said, but her voice wavered. "He owns half of them," Audrey said flatly. "Calling the police just tells him exactly where I am." She was already moving toward the back, toward the tiny storage room where she kept her few belongings. "I need to go.
Now.
Tonight." "Audrey." "He'll come back, Rosie. And when he does, anyone near me becomes leverage." Audrey shoved her spare clothes into a backpack, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. "I won't let you get hurt because of me." Rosie followed her into the storage room. "Where will you go?" "Somewhere he'll follow me." Audrey zipped the backpack closed. "Somewhere you won't be." "Baby, you can't just." "I can. I have to." Audrey turned to face her, this woman who'd saved her life with nothing but soup and kindness. "You gave me 18 months of peace. That's more than I deserved. More than I thought I'd ever have again." Rosie's eyes filled with tears. She disappeared into her office and came back with an envelope, the emergency cash she kept hidden in her desk drawer. She pressed it into Audrey's hands, gripping her wrists tight. "You listen to me," Rosie whispered, her voice breaking. "You're not a killer, Audrey. You're a fighter. There's a difference. A killer takes life without purpose. A fighter protects it. Don't you forget that." Audrey's throat closed. She could only nod. They held each other for one long moment, Rosie's small frame trembling against Audrey's taller one. Then Audrey shouldered her backpack and walked toward the back door. She paused at the threshold, looked back one last time at the café that had been her sanctuary, at the counter where she'd poured 1,000 cups of coffee, at Rosie, who was watching her with tears streaming down her weathered face. "Thank you," Audrey whispered, "for everything." Then she stepped out into the cold night air. She was homeless again, hunted again, a target with the most dangerous man in the city looking for her, a man who now had both her face and her name burned into his memory. But this time, she wasn't running from herself. The fighter was awake. The guilt that had chained her for 18 months had shattered the moment Renzo's hand connected with her face. She defended herself, defended Rosie, done exactly what her father had taught her, used her power for the right reasons. Audrey Keller walked into the darkness with her head up, her fists ready, and the memory of Renzo Bianchi's shocked expression still vivid in her mind. The way he'd looked at her in that final moment before he fell. Not with simple rage, but with something more complex. Something that had made her stomach twist in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Recognition.
Respect.
And, beneath the promise of violence, interest. She shook her head, dismissing the thought as she disappeared into the night. This wasn't the beginning of anything except survival. Or so she told herself. But somewhere across the city, in the back of a speeding car heading toward a private hospital, Renzo Bianchi sat with his broken jaw and thought about the waitress with the dark ponytail and the perfect right hook. And despite the pain, despite the humiliation, despite everything, he smiled. He'd finally found her. The one person in this entire city who wasn't afraid of him. And he was going to make her pay for that punch in ways she couldn't even imagine. Or perhaps, and this thought surprised even him, he was going to make her his. The game, after all, was just beginning. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and be part of a community that cherishes unforgettable tales like this one. Your support means more than you know. It fuels the creation of even more stories that speak to the heart. So, whether you're watching from your TV or your phone, take a moment to join us. Every like, every subscription, every share helps us continue bringing these stories to life. Thank you for being a part of this journey.